I'm going to go on and call the meeting to order. We don't have a quorum yet, but we're going to go on and allow public testimony. Representative Brooks.
Yes, sir.
Who's that to your right? That's who I hoped it was. And I thought I saw him, but I didn't want to call his name and him not be in the room. Representative Flood, I'm going to, as just for the benefit of the group, we are waiting for a committee sub to be drafted that corrects some boundary lines so that the legislation reflects the maps accurately. And we will not vote today. We will, as soon as I get the letter from reapportionment and from Legislative Council, hopefully have a vote at that time. But I'm going to allow Representative Flood and Representative Bruce to discuss some of the things that have happened since the last meeting. I think I got it right. Representative Bruce.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, first, we apologize that Legislative Council didn't have the bill ready in time for us, but we appreciate you giving the people who did come down an opportunity to speak. I know that wasn't the plan, but I appreciate you allowing them to do that because there are a number of people here who want to have something to say. But since the last meeting, we have met with the mayors, I believe, of all of the cities. We met with members of the community, and we've come up with a revision committee substitute that will hopefully address all of the concerns that were brought out in the last time we got together. Primarily, the cities were concerned about having an opportunity to go through a process of annexation if those people who live in contiguous areas wanted to do that. And I believe the way that it was finalized is that they would have until September to utilize the 60% rule to be able to annex if people in fact want to be part of those cities, and if they don't, then they would vote down or not sign any petition to be part of it.
Representative Bruce, for the benefit of the people, would one of you just give a brief explanation of the 60% so that everybody understands that that's the choice of the citizens, not the choice of the municipality?
That is correct. The citizens, it would require the 60% of the landowners, as well as I understand the 60% of those the voters in the area would have to agree to be annexed. And absent that agreement, there would be no annexation. Is that? That's correct. Okay.
It effectively puts control in the hands of the voters.
That is correct. That was our commitment, that we would not have people wake up and be in the city if they didn't want to be there. So that's what that does. That was the primary change. We are going to have the referendum in November of this year, and that was the primary change to it, and some boundary lines.
Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, Representative Bruce and myself and Representative Teague, Senator Reed have spent a pretty significant amount of time since the last hearing talking to a number of people about their concerns. The center of the issues seem to be around the area relative to annexation. There were, as Representative Bruce pointed out, there was all of the cities had some level of plans or expectations of wanting to be able to annex some areas, and we worked through what we believe is a very fair and reasonable compromise that would allow them that opportunity to annex, but would give the citizens essentially the veto power to say no if they chose not to be annexed into an existing city. We wanted to do that, but also balance the viability of any of the new cities, so that a city that would be newly incorporated would have a sufficient amount of population and tax base to be able to survive. And so we've done that, and we've spoken with representatives or mayors of each of the cities, and feel very comfortable that they agree and confer with us that the annexation opportunity through September 1st, September 1 of 2006 is something that they're amenable to.
Any, Senator Reed?
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to continue this conversation on the creation of, or the opportunity for the creation of 2 new cities in South Fulton. Representative Flood and I have been working literally nonstop since the last hearing, and I believe have gone a long way in addressing as many of the concerns as we're able to address. We've cleaned up the cities with regard to the islands that existed in the cities quite a bit. We've come up with a reasonable compromise and language that will allow annexation to continue through the 60% through the 100% method, so that during the process and up to the vote, cities will have the opportunity to petition residents in contiguous areas to determine whether they would be allowed. That was an area of concern for Representative Geisinger. He wanted to know what methods could be used to accommodate some of the cities. And the 3 of us are certainly in agreement on the overwhelming majority of issues that were facing us. And the delay in the bill has to do with legislative council and reapportionment, drafting the maps. And also, as you know, we're going to need to provide for council districts that will later be approved by the Justice Department.
Thank you, Senator Reed. And as you know, the goal of the committee is to make sure that the bill is right when it leaves here. We don't want to have amendments in the Rules Committee or on the floor. Certainly in the short time, we're better off getting things correct now so that they could simply, hopefully, be accepted when it moved back towards the Senate. Do the 3 of you have anything else to add, or any questions of the committee members for the representatives and the senator? Representative Geisinger.
Senator Reed, the agreement I understand with the cities is for September. What date in September? The 1st or the 30th?
30 days. The first 30 days out.
The 30th of September or the 1st of September?
The first.
How did you happen to pick that date?
Representative Bruce can answer.
So that we would have time to prepare the map, so that people, when they went to the polls, would know what they're voting on. That's why.
Thank you.
Any other questions of the committee? We've got about 10 people that have signed up to speak on the legislation. Y'all are welcome to stay there, or you can join us around here. And I'm going to just go straight down the list. Earl Henman. Hey, Kasim, I'm sorry, Senator, would you put the microphone at the podium? Thank you.
Good morning, gentlemen. My name is Earl Heinman, and I'm the Vice President of Fife Community Association. For those of you who do not know where Fife is, it's out in South Fulton County on Highway 92, where CNX Railroad crosses 92. our community is 150 years old. A lot of us have been there 40, 50, 60 years. Yesterday morning, I canvassed our community, door by door. And I found not one citizen who has been contacted by a representative of any municipality as to annexation. I found that our citizens do not want to be annexed into a municipality. I also found that our citizens were appalled at the idea that our community may be set aside and be denied a vote. They understand what these two bills are and what they're about and what they're for. We ask you that these bills be passed intact so that all citizens get a fair vote. Thank you.
Can I ask you a question? Correct me if I'm wrong, gentlemen, the annexation method that has been agreed to would be at the will of the citizens. 60% of the citizens in the affected area would have to agree to come into the municipality. So the city could not simply annex your area at the municipality's desire. It would have to be at the desire of the citizens as well.
Well, that's why we're here this morning, because there's been so many rumors and so many false statements made, and we want to be sure of what we're doing. I have a contingency with me this morning. Everybody from 5 stand up. This is just a few of our citizens who came with us this morning. We have understood that an agreement had been made to set aside South Fulton area, and that area be denied in order that Union City might, in the future, annex us. Our citizens are 100% against that proposal. Now, that's what we've heard. You tell us, is that not the case?
And I'm waiting on the bill from the Legislative Council, but the way the bill is to be drafted, it's my understanding, and I'll let the authors of the bill speak to this as well, is that 60% of the people in the affected area would have to petition to be annexed. So it would still be at the will of the public, that the municipality could not simply reach out and grab you, so to speak, and put you in their city. 60% of the people would have to vote in favor of going into that city.
Well, that's good news.
That's Representative Geisner.
Excuse me, I'd like to ask another question of you, if I may, please, sir. That's all right. Where do you live in relation to the map?
Oh, well, I'll have to look at the map closely, but I live at 8295 Spence Road. I live about 400 yards west of the CNX Railroad where it crosses Highway 92.
Well, I don't know where that is.
Okay.
What city is it in close proximity to?
Okay, you're...
Highway 92, Glen Street, right here. This is Fife, right here.
All right.
This is Fife, right in this area.
He's down there. Now, you do understand that one of two things is going to happen. You will either be in maybe Union City or in the city of South Fulton.
We understand that.
Or you will be unincorporated if it fails.
We understand that.
Okay, all right.
We accept that.
Well, I just wanted to make sure that because you had indicated that you said you wanted us to vote for, but I didn't know what you wanted us to vote for.
We want the right to vote.
But when you have the right to vote, let's assume that you're not annexed during that period into the city of into Union City. When you have the right to vote, the majority, 50 plus one vote, will decide whether you're going to be in South Fulton or not.
We understand that.
Okay, that's all I need Make sure that you understood
We
it. Thank you.
understand that.
Thank you, sir.
Any more questions?
Well, I thought that for the benefit of the people that we should clear up what type of annexation is being allowed. It's one that the citizens have to approve. 60% of the citizens and the people would have to approve. George Nicholson.
Mr. Chairman and committee members, my name is George Nicholson. I reside at 7985 Spence Road. I am just adjacent to the Fife community, closer to Oakley Industrial. I think one of the things just from this past conversation that I'd like to get clarified, what will be, for example, if Union City and the adjoining community of one of the current new subdivisions decides to request this annexation, what will be the boundaries that will be voted on? If the Fife community is included in that boundary, there may be enough citizens in just one new subdivision to override us totally with the 60% number. So how will this boundary be set up of what's voted on for annexation by the public?
Senator Reed, if you'll tell me what number you're at, I'll flip you.
The way that the boundaries will work under the 60% rule is that the map will change based upon the signatures of 60% of the population that are contiguous to the cities.
Okay, so in other words, if, as an example, Oakley Township, which is a 1,200 home community, if they voted and petitioned the city and had 60%, it would cut off at the boundary off that subdivision and not extend beyond that. Who's going to make that determination?
Well, there's one, Mr. Chairman, may I follow up? One standard that has to be in place is that it has to be contiguous.
Right.
And then the boundary would follow the population and the people who, and the area that we're 60% of the people in a specific block. We use blocks and boundaries to create this map. That 60% of those people decided that they wanted to go into a municipality, then it would follow that block.
Okay, so if 60% of the Oakley Township voted, but nobody outside of the Oakley Township voted, then it would be cut off at the Oakley Township block.
Yes, the portion that's contiguous to the city that's attempting to annex.
Okay. That answers my question. The only other thing I have to say is most of the residents I've spoken with in the area have not been approached by any of the cities about annexation. There was some conversation about ongoing annexation discussions with communities. I was at the Oakley Township community last night, and the committee chairman down there and the citizens that were there have not had any discussions up to this point with any local cities. So we just wanted to make sure that everybody had equal rights and that one large group wasn't going to override by somebody outlining some boundaries. So I understand the boundary situation now. I think that clarifies my concerns. And we do want to have the right to vote on the city of South Fulton or remaining unincorporated South Fulton.
Thank you. Dorothy Edmond.
Mr. Chairman and committee members, my name is Dorothy Edmond, and I live in unincorporated South Fulton at 1590 Loch Lomond Trail in Atlanta, and I have an Atlanta address. I would like to urge you to pass House Bills 552 and 553, which would permit us as citizens of South Fulton to decide our own fate. Last week I was in this very room and at another hearing, and there were people from the cities, from the existing cities, asking whose ox would be gored by the passage of this legislation. And I don't think anybody's ox would be gored, to tell you the truth. These cities have been in existence for a long time, almost since God was a boy. So I don't see any reason why they should all of a sudden decide that they want to grow. Cities can grow in more than one way. They can grow either geographically or they can grow substantively. They can improve the quality of life for their existing citizens. They can attract businesses. They can clean up their existing cities. And as Booker Washington once said, they can let down their buckets where they are and improve where they are. I don't see any reason why they should have any beef with our becoming the city of South Fulton. I urge you to allow us to vote to become a city of South Fulton. I have no problems with the 60%. I want to go on record as saying I have no problem with that. I realize that we have to compromise somewhere at some time, but it's incumbent upon us to get out and make sure that we are not annexed. But I want to urge you as a committee to vote to allow us the right to vote in November on whether or not we want to become a city of South Fulton. Thank you very much.
Councilman Joe Carn, is that correct?
That is correct. Thank you for the opportunity, Mr. Chairman. My name is Joe Carn. I'm a city councilman from the city of College Park, Incorporated College Park. We have spoken with Representative Flood, Senator Reed, Representative Bruce, and they've worked with us, trying to make sure that we get a little fairness on this thing. What we're asking for is this, though. College Park has we've had a lot of issues with growth and with our limit of growth due to Hartsfield-Jackson Airport. Over the past 3 decades or so, close to half of our city has been taken by the airport properties. There's a 5th runway opening in May. It plans for a 6th runway, which would take up more of our land in the city of College Park. Now, while we would not want to stop the unincorporated areas of South Fulton at all from becoming a city, I think they need that right to do that. We also ask for the opportunity for us to grow and regain some of the land that we do not have any further. This, if this city becomes a city the way the map is drawn, we'd be landlocked. We can't grow ever. Now, being the youngest councilman on the council, as well as I just started my term in January, so I kind of got thrown off the deep end, I guess you could say. But what we're asking for, if possible, is a little more time to look at this. We've had several communities surrounding us that are not in the city limits that have expressed interest as far as coming into the city of College Park. We're talking with those communities. We're commencing a study right now looking at which one of those areas or which of those areas would make sense to take into the city. But only having until September to do our petitions, our 60-60, the arrangement that the legislature has given us, doesn't really give us enough time to thoroughly, it takes a lot of promotion to explain this to the people, to convince the people that this is what we want to do, and also to convince them that they want to be a part of us as well. They've expressed interest. We need enough time. And one of my big questions is this. This bill, we've heard that the leadership has indicated that this may possibly be the last year for incorporation of these cities the way you're doing it. Assuming that I was told they threw out the 3-mile rule, and there are a lot of cities that want to become, a lot of areas that want to become cities. Is there going to be, is that option going to be available next year for cities for areas to become cities, as it has been this year? We would like to know if that's the case, if that's going to, would there be time to do this next year, which would give us more time to prepare and do the things that we need to do to prepare for the growth. And another question we had was about the Johns Creek legislature issue. They allowed some of the residents to vote to be in Johns Creek or in Roswell. We were looking at the possibility of having a second option of a second question on the ballot, possibly, to give residents more of a choice.
So let me address a couple of your questions. As the chair of the committee, we don't ever know what's going to happen in the November elections. We don't know If things happened that if I continued to serve as the chair of the committee, my hope on what I would propose as a rule change to our leadership next year would be that the incorporation bills be introduced in the first year. Money sought through the budget to have the study done by the university or the college in the interim, and then the vote up or down on the incorporation or on the legislation of the incorporation in the second year. So I do expect that it will slow down at some point. And the other thing for these people in South Fulton, I think that the urgency of this measure is with the incorporations of the remainder of Fulton County, the potential adverse impact for these people, I think, is what makes this vote necessary in a more timely manner.
Well, part of my question is this the last opportunity they'll have to incorporate? That's what I'm trying to ascertain. And you're saying you don't know. Is that
No, I think I made it. I'm sorry. I thought my desire as the chair, and nobody knows who will be the chair next year, would be to require incorporation bills to be submitted in the first year of a 2-year session. The money placed in the budget by the state at the request of the legislators for the study to be done either through the Carl Vinson Institute of Government, which is where most of them are done, or I understand Georgia State has the ability to do them as well. And then in the second year of the 2-year session, then we would vote up or down on the legislation, and the people would then vote in the one of the following election cycles. So I do hope that as we go forward that there is a greater time frame between the legislation being introduced and the time that the citizens actually vote on the incorporation. That way it gives more time for public comment and other things. The issue we have here is that you've got the other areas that are probably going to be incorporating, I would think.
Right. And we want to see that happen for those areas, but we would ask for time for us to be able to grow geographically as well as economically. So appreciate the time.
All right, thank you. Councilman Charles Phillips.
I think you just answered my questions that I was going to present. As I understand what you just stated, is the actual vote would be next year by the citizens, would not be this November. Is that true?
No, sir.
I thought you said, okay, well, maybe
No,
I'm not understanding.
What he asked how we were going to handle incorporations in the future and why we needed to pass this bill this year. And I may or may not be honored to sit here as the chairman next year. If I am the chairman of Governmental Affairs, my hope is to go with a proposed rule change that would require the legislation for the incorporation to be introduced in the first year of the 2-year session, the money placed in the budget so that the university would do the study on the incorporation and the effects of the incorporation on the citizens during the interim between the first term and the second term of the 2-year term. And then during the second term, we would pass the legislation, and that would give time for the study to be done, presented to the general public, and so
that's for any future annexation or incorporation.
And that's who knows who's going to be sitting in this chair next year. I mean, the next chairman may not have those same desires, and I may, and the committee will certainly vote on it, and we'll have other discussion on it. But that's my thought process as the current chairman.
Only other comment I would like to make. We also feel, and a lot of people in my community feel, that this total bill is really goes against the Voters' Rights Act. It appears to me to be another reconstruction and creating 3 different areas of this county. One majority white on one end, squeezing all the blacks in the middle, and majority white on the far end. I think that something that's going to eliminate the black vote. I think it's difficult. I think there's suspect of that being designed to the black vote.
I would. I find it hard to believe that Senator Reid or Representative Bruce or Virgil Flood would engage in those types of activities.
Well, we were asked the same question, but it's not funny to me. It looks. I don't like the way that that's done. We're creating a city with 3,000 people on one end. It's 99% white. Same thing that you already created on the north end, and you're squeezing all of the blacks in the middle. But that will be dealt with later. That's my comment.
Thank you. Ed Travis. I'll let you all.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, panel. I'm going to try to come at this at the start objectively. I have taken some courses in public administration and transportation and it was this history of a city. I think, first of all, I would appreciate it as a citizen to have more time to incorporate. And your mentioning of, the chairman's mentioning of the 2-year process, I think is something that's needed. I think Sandy Springs has been working on this a long time, and frankly, I think they should have become a city a long time ago with the vitality of that area. The other areas, I worry about a number of things. I think viability is important. Usually in the structure of a city or the building of a city, a compact nature is good. And I think most people in building cities and counties and government structures would agree that to provide your services, you want to be able to reach all your areas equally well in either a circular pattern or a block, not this gerrymandering type of process here. And Fulton County has that process that up at the top of the county, you've got a big bubble, and at the bottom of the county, you've got a big bubble, and that was going back to 1932. So with Campbell County and Milton County joining in. I think it's important to think about the rings of a city. A city usually grows from the inside out. As time grows, cities need to grow. Now, we're talking about, put your bucket where it lays. Sometimes that's not possible, and the only way for a place to grow is vertically up. And I don't think we want a whole bunch of skyscrapers in this area. I frankly think it's very important for Atlanta to remain viable for the region, for the vitality of the region, the county, and the state. And all of those things are important. And I would prefer to be in the city of Atlanta, even though I'm in the Old National Corridor, because it has the resources that the other ones will not have at any point, I don't believe. I would like to ask either Senator Reid or one of the two representatives, was it mentioned where the center of this city would be? For South Fulton or Campbell, whatever you want to call it.
Mr. Chairman, I can take a shot at it. The center of the city, candidly, has not been determined. There will be a negotiation because we're not there yet. I mean, we've had a lot of conversations as if it's fait accompli that there will be two cities created. I view the debate we're having right now, the comments you're making, I view that as a part of the discussion during the decision whether or not to have a city at all. I view the mayor as having an opportunity to be a part of that dialogue, to talk to see people in unincorporated South Fulton. So I don't have a direct answer to your question. My view would be that we would begin to work with Fulton County government to identify an appropriate county seat, so to speak, that would be tied to the population area. Much in the way that, for example, in Rico, there is a building that's used by people in the farthest part of South Fulton as a community center that candidly used to be a government facility. So the straight answer is we don't have a town seat because I don't believe it's appropriate to even be having that discussion. I believe that right now the question that's on the table for folk, and we have heard overwhelmingly from people that live in the unincorporated areas, is what you want to do. If the people in the unincorporated areas fail to vote for a city, we will be status quo. And I view that part as being, that's a debate, and that's what people want to determine. But I don't hear even the people here saying they definitely want to be in the city. And Representative Bruce and Representative Flood are here, and other representatives, that's not what we heard. But what we definitely heard was because of the changes in North Fulton County, because of the tax increases that people who are in the unincorporated areas, including me and you, are facing, that we want to have the right to determine whether a city is best or other options are best. And that's really where we are. And your concern about time, I also think is a fair concern, which is why we provided for 2 referendums in this piece of legislation, so that our community is certainly sophisticated enough to make a judgment that we're not prepared to have a city at this time and vote the referendum down. But we do so knowing that there will be an additional opportunity for a referendum if people, after vigorous debate, aren't ready for cityhood at that time. But I mean, I think your position, and we've seen each other in town hall meetings, I think your position is entirely fair. But I did want to answer your question.
Okay. Well, I thank you there. I think one of the difficulties in looking at the city as proposed is you've only got one city proposed, and this is not an ideal structure for a city. This one here.
2.
The city of South Fulton, not the Chattahoochee Hills. With this, it's very difficult to provide those services, and frankly, I would appreciate it if more were studied on, how everyone can best be served through the process.
Thank you. Holman Edmond.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, ladies and gentlemen of the committee, just in case I run out of breath, let me say this. I want to be a citizen of the city of South Fulton, or Campbell, whatever the name is. I'm Holman Edmond. I live at 1590 Loch Lomond Trail, unincorporated South Fulton. I've lived there for 33 years, and most of you have seen me before. I'm here again to ask that you vote out bills 552 and 553. This will allow the citizens of South Fulton to try and determine their own destiny. That's all we're asking for, and I think you'll be able to give us that. A yes vote by you will give all citizens of South Fulton County an opportunity to vote for either cityhood, annexation, or remain the same. The results of the vote will be an expression of the will of the majority of the voters. Ladies and gentlemen, I learned that back in 6th grade civics. And I think you all did that too. A yes vote by this committee will allow South Fulton citizens to vote on this very important thing. I mentioned to you before what is considered growth for some people. We are fighting for existence. They are fighting to grow. No party will be completely satisfied because one party's growth is another party's demise, as is proposed by some people. In other words, if I come up on the losing end, the cityhood people will be celebrating, but I'll be over in the morgue mourning the loss of my citizenship as I like it. Finally, again, vote, if you will, to move this to the House and Senate and give us a chance to vote. That's the old American way. I appreciate my time before you. Thank you, sir. Questions? Apparently there are none.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and ladies and gentlemen of this fine committee. My name is Benny Crane. I live at 43 390 Gillette Road in unincorporated Fulton County. And we certainly appreciate the opportunity that you've given us, even though the bill is not coming before you today because of some glitch in the system. And those kind of things happen. But to have the opportunity to speak to you once more is a great opportunity, and we cherish that. I just want to share with you just a few thoughts. Senator Kasim Reed and Representative Flood, Representative Bruce, they've spent countless hours out in the community talking about the benefits, the pros and cons of cityhood versus annexation. It hasn't been a sales campaign for cityhood. It's about giving the facts, and that's what the people have wanted. Not only have our elected representatives been out pounding the concrete, many of us who are part of the concerned citizens of South Fulton, we've been out pounding the concrete too. I mean, we meet several times a week in several locations per day. I mean, this has become our tsunami. This is our Katrina, because this is the single most important issue that's affecting the most lives at one time of any kind of circumstance that we can envision. So it's important to us to get the facts out about which option is better, whether it's better to be a city or whether it's better to be annexed, because the reality is a vote no for a city is not a vote to stay as we are, because we won't stay as we are. That will be just taking down the veil for us to be annexed into some city. We're not operating in the fog. We do understand that. But one thing that we fully recognize, that in negotiations like this, sometimes there's a give and take. You have to negotiate, and you have to give up something that perhaps you otherwise wanted. And in this compromise, we realize that the proposal that gives the cities an opportunity to annex in contiguous area up until September 1st, that really puts the cities at an advantage over the ordinary citizens. Because, in fact, it gives the cities two opportunities to annex in. They have the opportunity now to go pound the concrete and advocate for signing of petitions from now until September 1st, if you pass this bill out. If they fail to do it by September 1st, they still have the opportunity to rally the people in their communities to vote no for cityhood, because a vote no for cityhood is another vote for annexation. That puts us kind of at a disadvantage, those of us who want to be a city. But we understand that. We realize that both sides have to push the rock up the hill, and we're fully prepared to do that. But we only have that opportunity, sir, if this great body passes this bill on to rules and on to the House for a full affirmative vote to give us the opportunity to go to the polls in November. Let me just share with you, I mean, we've talked to police services, we've talked to fire services, we've talked to every service provider that's currently providing services to South Fulton County now. And people will tell you that, well, there's a concern about the delivery of services in a gerrymandered community. Well, the services are being delivered now. The services that will be delivered to the new city will be delivered to the same area. Nothing changes. I submit to you that perhaps not even the service deliverers will change, because I'm fully convinced that perhaps most of the fine firefighters that are working in South Fulton now with a check signed by Fulton County will be working in the same fire stations, but only their checks would then be the city of South Fulton. So service delivery is not a problem. We can get the services delivered to the people just like it's being delivered now. And what I like about it is we've talked to clergy, we've talked to community leaders, we talked to anybody who will stop long enough to listen to us. And I just want to check, because we know Fife is well represented here, but everybody who's here who are for the support of the city of South Fulton, would you stand and be recognized, please? Thank you very much. In those numbers, you have clergy represented, you have business leaders, you have homeowners, you have across the spectrum. They're all here because we have a vested interest, because, again, this is also, too, their tsunami. It affects us in a profound way. Let me just conclude by saying this. Here's a great opportunity for this community to do something that's unprecedented. Not in our lifetime will perhaps we will ever have the opportunity to be in a groundbreaking experience like the creation of a city. Most cities in Georgia were created long before anybody in this room was even born. But here we have the opportunity to do something wonderful And more importantly, we have the opportunity to be in control of our own destiny. And what I would urge this body to do is please pass this out with an affirmative vote, giving us that opportunity to go to the polls in November, to have the opportunity to vote yes or no for cityhood. Thank you.
Thank you. We've got 7 other people that have signed up to speak. We've only got the room for a few more minutes, so I want to ask you, if you could, to keep your comments brief. I do want to mention this because reapportionment said that there seemed to be some confusion of the map. What is purple is the proposed city of South Fulton. The proposed city of Chattahoochee Hills is not in color on the map, but it would be the white part in the bottom left corner, and it's probably not all represented there. Rex Renfro.
Thank you, sir. I'll keep my comments very brief. The map, on the map, I just noticed that there's a portion to the other side of 154 that appears to have been added to Campbell. I'm not sure why, but before that boundary ran straight down 154. The city of South Fulton has not asked for that to be included. I don't know if it's an error or just a correction that was made to the map. I would like to point it out to you.
Would you do me a favor at the end of the committee meeting and circle that map?
Sure.
We'll leave that there, but if you'll circle it.
Sure. As we talked before, the group of us that's been working on this has started back in the year 2000. We've worked on this for a long time. And when it became apparent that 2 unincorporated areas in North Fulton were going to seek cityhood, we met and had long discussions. I do want it to be clear with all of you that we decided we did not want to be annexed. That what we wanted was the opportunity to create a new city. If we had wanted to be annexed, we would have gone to the current cities, started conversations with them. Instead, we went to our elected representatives. We told them where we were and asked them for this opportunity to vote. Included in that opportunity, I would hope that the cities in their interest would come forward with the services that they can provide and the efficiency with which they can provide them. The citizens, the concerned citizens of South Fulton are looking for the most efficient way to receive the services that we now get. We would be happy to talk to anyone who believes they can give us efficient services, and will do that. And we know that there's some areas. You heard from a person close to Cascade who in their division want to be a part of the city of Atlanta, and we will support that if that's what 60% of the people want to do. We do have a problem. This time thing is an issue. This year our millage rate was raised 3 mills. According to Dr. Egger's study, we as a city are totally self-sufficient at that millage rate, and we'll have a surplus by the year 2010. Under the current materiality of where we are, the truth is, in 2007, we are facing an enormous tax increase. Because we will not be a city, we will not have control over our own funds, and the Fulton County will declare that there is a deficit in spending on the south side. So the issue of time is extremely important to us. So I would appreciate it if you would pass this bill out of committee and give us the opportunity to choose. Does anyone have any questions?
Thank you. Robert Egger.
My name is Robert Egger. I'm a professor at Georgia State University. I am the author of the study on both 553 and 552, I believe, or 554, whichever one it is. I just wanted to remind the committee that the opportunity for incorporation is all that's being asked. And we've heard that about 1 million times now so far this afternoon. And to remind you that the opportunity is now. And as Mr. Chairman pointed out, that may not be next year. And currently, the viability of both of these cities is currently plausible at their current tax rate. And I believe that the fear of the citizens is the increase in that tax rate, which appears to be quite inevitable come 2007. Thank you.
Thank you. Angelette Mealing.
Good afternoon, Chairman and members of the committee. My name is Angelette Mill, and I'm a newly elected councilperson for Union City. I would like to first thank Senator Reed, Representative Flood, Representative Teague, and Representative Buse for their efforts in the last week or so with meeting with the cities. Developing an annexation plan is a timely process, which gives municipalities time to work through looking at all the financial side and level of services that will be offered to property owners. Union City has had an annexation plan for the past 8 years, which we have been actively annexing property, which property owners have contacted the city that want to be a part of our city. The viability of South Fulton is predicated on current cities to the proposed city coexisting together with all the necessary future resources to make them sustainable. I support Senate Bill 552, which gives unincorporated South Fulton citizens the right to determine whether or not they will want to be a new city or remain in unincorporated. Thank you for your time.
I'm having a little trouble reading the next name. Harkins, is that something? Watkins, I'm sorry. Angie, I apologize. Angie. Vangie. It wasn't your handwriting, it was other people that scribbled over it.
I have to live with that all the time. Good afternoon, and thank you for the opportunity to speak. I think all of my feelings, sentiments, my position has been expressed. I want to thank you once again for holding this hearing and allowing citizens to come and speak. We are placed in this position because of and as a reaction to what is happening on the north side. It's not as though we had a hidden agenda. It's that we were forced to circle the wagons in an effort to defend ourselves against what was being, or the potential of the possibility of something being perpetrated upon the citizens of South Fulton County. So I thank Senator Reed and other representatives, and I do thank you in advance for allowing us to go to the polls to vote in support of the city of South Fulton.
Thank you. We have, it's 2 o'clock now. There's another committee meeting scheduled at 2 o'clock. We have 3 other people signed up. I'm going to allow each of you about 1.5 minutes to speak, if you would, and I apologize for the briefness. But Dennis Davenport.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just briefly, I'm representing both the city of Union City and the city of Palmetto, and I wanted to comment about the 60% method, which is being proposed to clear up an issue that was raised earlier. The 60% method does, in fact, look at the owners of 60% of the property. It also looks at the registered voters in that area, comprising 60% of the registered voters. But the third element is to be looked at more closely. The contiguity requirement is a 1/8 contiguity. The boundaries for the city of Union City or Palmetto can only go out so that there is at least 1/8 contiguity with the city of Union City. So that if that area includes, for example, the area of Fife and the area of the Oakley Township, just as the example used earlier, if 60% of the registered voters in that area as delineated voted to come in, and 60% of the owners of the property also petitioned to come in, then that whole area would come in, not just the area where Oakley Township was, just to clear up the 60% method. But there were 2 questions about the 60% method that probably need to be answered. Number one, the deadline of September 1, was that a deadline for completion of annexation, or was that a deadline for ongoing annexation, or is that addressed at all in the proposed language? The second question, as far as the annexation methodology will be concerned, currently when cities go to annex, they run the risk of having an objection lodged against the annexation by the county. Is there any language in the bill that would at least recognize the fact that although Fulton County may have the ability to object to an annexation, based upon these circumstances and these two bills, that objection would not be possible under these circumstances? That's the second issue that I've not heard any issues on at all up to now, and I would wonder if those two issues are being addressed by the language. I know the language is still being drafted, but I'm trying to look at the details to see what can be ascertained as to those two particular issues.
Representative Flood, I'm going to allow.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Dennis, you asked two questions. One was with regard to when the annexation, the time frame for the completion of the annexation is September 1 of 2006. The second part of your question was with regard to the dispute. If there is a dispute that's lodged by Fulton County against a proposed annexation, there is an existing bill, HB 709, that establishes a process that dispute resolution is handled. And you can refer to that as HB 709. That's an annexation dispute resolution process. It basically outlines the methodology for how disputes would be handled, and we would follow that existing law that's already in law.
And I understand that as the process, but with the September 1 deadline, these two cities, all the cities in South Fulton, are the only ones under a September 1 deadline.
I'm sorry. We're going to have to, you've got detailed questions. We're going to have to deal with that further. I've got to allow the other committee in. I've got Pastor Henry and I've got Donzella James that I want to allow to speak briefly on the legislation. And again, I apologize, but we simply have to allow motor vehicles into the committee room. They've got it scheduled.
I am Donzella James, and I served as a state senator for many years. And we work for One South Fulton. I'm also a 29-year homeowner. This is my husband, Elmo, and I, who have built our future, our past in South Fulton. And we love our community and don't want to move. But, of course, the repercussions from Sandy Springs have been devastating, and they're going to be even worse if we are not allowed to take our future into our own hands by voting to become a city. I stand in favor of HB 552 and 554 because it will allow the citizens to do just that, so we can vote on what happens to us. And yes, this train is really moving fast, because if we don't vote on this, then we might be cherry-picked by other cities and that surround us now. And they are part of South Fulton, and we want one strong area in the south part of the county. And in order to do that, then I think that we, in the unincorporated Fulton County portion, should become a city. So I thank you very much for listening to me. I have fought and worked on this issue for the past year with many of the people in this room. We had the concerned citizens of South Fulton, and I hope, I do thank you very much, and thank Senator Reed and the representatives for all their hard work. So please let this bill move through. Thank you.
Thank you. Pastor, I apologize for the time frame.
Thank you so very much for the opportunity. On last week, I was in Washington with the NARO conference, the housing authorities, and I'm honored to be here. I've been pastoring and preaching for over 30 years, and one thing I've learned, that when everyone has said everything needs to be said, they need not another sermon. But I have learned one thing, and that is when someone takes something from you, you scream. When someone gives you something, you say thank you. And I just want to close with the benediction by saying thank you for just giving us the right to vote. Thank you.
Senator Moody, if you will, would you please present Senate Bill? Oh, excuse me. I didn't realize that was... I retract my request. If we can, let's hear Senator Stevens and Senate Bill 500, if you will, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senator Moody and I just look a lot alike. I know. Ready?
Please continue.
Mr. Chairman, thank you for the opportunity to present Senate Bill 500. Just as trivia, I will point out that I've been in the Senate 8 years and started as a freshman senator and been majority leader twice and floor leader and have never presented to a House committee. Can you imagine that? So thank you for the honor of being here today.
I feel honored that you're presenting to this committee.
Yeah. Senate Bill 500, before you today, I mentioned when it was presented to the Senate, I think ultimately could be one of the more important pieces of legislation that we present this year. And what it does is it creates a pilot program for the purpose of testing a verifiable paper audit trail for Georgia's electronic voting machines, kind of in keeping with my hope that someday that this state has the most secure voting system in the country. We did a little bit of work on that with the voter ID and all that, so this is a subsequent step to it. Without belaboring the point, I'm just going to just deal directly with how the bill as presented works. Senate Bill 500 just requires the Secretary of State's office to conduct a pilot program in each of 3 different counties in Georgia for the purpose of just testing and verifying the results from the electronic voting machines. It picks Bibb County, Camden County, and Cobb counties as the 3 counties. The idea being that a single precinct in each county would be selected, and the precincts would be selected to try to get a demographic mix that looks like Georgia. And we were thinking with those 3 counties, with the diversity that's in particularly in Cobb and in Bibb County, you could find some precincts which, if you combine the 3 precincts, would match the demographics of Georgia. So we thought that was a good thing to do. It conducts a test in the November elections. It requires the Secretary of State's office to conduct an audit within 30 days of the results of the election and compare the actual audit trail with the actual results of the votes that were cast by the electronic voting machines. The idea sprang from the notion that it is crucial and important for people in Georgia to believe the results of their election. And it passed Senate by a vote of 51-0. It's one of the few things in the elections process I've seen that actually seem to have a bipartisan tone to it. People on both sides of the aisle seem to like the idea, and with the notion of making Georgia's voting system the most secure in the nation. So that's a quick overview, and you've had time to study it, Mr. Chairman. I'm sure there are other questions. So that's basically, I know you have other people to testify. If it's okay, I'll take whatever questions you have or whatever the procedure is here in the House, and then
we would
come back.
Are there any questions of the members of the committee? Senator, you and I both know, since we've been involved in the political process for a number of years, that the elections in Georgia have not always been the most honest. And with the advent of the electronic equipment, it's become questionable. And I think that at some point this morning we will hear from, or this afternoon we will hear from a few people in regards to their concerns about the electronic equipment. But this is a step in the right direction.
Mr. Chairman, I don't know when it's appropriate to make comments. If there are changes in the bill as it goes along, if I could be allowed at some point to make comments on those as it's appropriate, I would appreciate it.
Senator, you can do it at any time you wish.
Thank you.
Excuse me, are the microphones on? We can't hear.
You cannot hear? They're on. Maybe if I turn the volume up, how's that? Are there any questions of the... Okay. Senator, if you would come back to the podium, please.
Yes, sir.
You and I have discussed the possibility of making an amendment to the legislation that you've introduced. And what it was to take the paper trail portion that you have in your bill and actually have a count in the precinct the night of the election of one race, and only one race, which is determined by the luck of the draw. And since this is an experiment, and we're only This legislation sunsets, I believe, on December 31st, doesn't it?
No, sir, that's not the exact date, but it does sunset after the test.
Election, yes. I thought it was the 31st, but after the test is completed, it is the 31st. Well, we have January 1, 2007, and the 31st.
Either way, it goes away.
Within 24 hours of our guesstimate. And your desire to cooperate with the possibility of checking out the process of doing the count of one race in a precinct, since we're only dealing with 3 counties and 3 precincts. I want to commend you, and we have a substitute that if you would like to speak to the substitute, I would like you to do so.
I would briefly. It is true that you and I have discussed the substitute that you're going to offer, and I have communicated to you privately that, and now publicly, I do have just a few reservations about it. Just in terms of, I'm concerned about what the potential would be in terms of the time it would take to conduct such a count the night of the election, doing this for the first time. I think Senate Bill 500, the way it was structured, was designed to not impact in any way adversely the results of the November 2006 elections. So I see the potential for that if you have the counties of Cobb, Camden, and Bibb, and if a count is conducted that night and somebody comes up short, inevitably a candidate whoever loses is going to contest the election. I just want to make it clear that ends up being a gubernatorial election, or otherwise it was not my idea. So I would be very careful with what we're doing. The other thing is I'm aware of the experience Nevada had, and when they decided to do such a thing, and it took 66 hours to complete the count. Now, admittedly, that was several different elections on the same ballot. So I would watch that. I would also, I think you'll get some other testimony that may communicate some reservations about it. Now, having said that, I've been around here long enough to know that a camel's a thoroughbred racehorse designed by legislative process. So, we go up and down, in and around, and amendments. I think this bill ought to move forward. And I think we're kind of approaching the 6th or 7th inning of a 9-inning ball game if you look at the session coming to an end. I'd like for it to move forward. But I just want to make it clear I do have reservations about doing any kind of count that evening, because I think you're going to end up pushing the results of some very important elections in November longer into the next day or beyond than you really want. So with that caveat, those are my thoughts.
Well, that may be true if you were going to count every race, but that isn't the way. As you know, you only count one race, and that race is decided as to which race it will be in that precinct that night after they have closed the precinct. So the delay may be 30 minutes, but I doubt that it's going to be much longer than that. And this is an experiment to see what will work, and then proceed from there.
Yes, sir.
Any questions of the members?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator. Yes. What's your number?
I have a question. We are entertaining consideration of a committee substitute to Senate Bill 500.
That's correct.
The committee has not taken any votes on Senate Bill 500, so I'm curious as to how it is that we have a committee substitute.
Well, we have to vote on the committee. You're right. We have to vote on 500 first, and then decide whether we're going to have a committee substitute. Do I hear a motion on 500? At the proper time. Yes.
I apologize. As you know, I had to run across and bring the bill back. Are we done with the testimony?
Yes, we are.
Question.
You got questions? Excuse me. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. We have not heard from the state elections director. anytime we're passing a piece of legislation relative to the elections process, should we not hear from the person who is given the responsibility of executing the elections in this state?
We have heard from, in subcommittee, we heard from the state elections director, but we can proceed and ask the state elections director to come forward at this time, if you will, please.
Thank you, Representative committee members. I did speak with you about House Bill 790 a week or so ago, and at that time I talked to you a little bit about the administration of elections at the polling place. I'd like for you to simply stop and envision the polling place at 7 p.m. on election night. The equipment that we'll be using with Senate Bill 500, which, by the way, is a very good bill in its current form as it did pass the Senate, we'll be utilizing equipment that has a voter-verifiable paper audit trail. The paper audit trail is encased in canisters which are attached to the voting unit. These canisters contain reel-to-reel tape that is rolled up in a continuous feed. Each unit could have up to 100 ballots cast per unit. We're currently looking at using polling places with approximately 10 units per poll. In November, that could be 1,000 ballots per precinct. Close of the polls, 7 o'clock. The poll workers will be asked to remove, under this revised bill, be asked to remove the canister, open the canister, and begin to unreel the paper, which, as I shared with you, and I showed you this photo, which is not a made-up photo, it's real and true and accurate of what the paper roll looks like when it's rolled out in a warehouse. And this was in Nevada, where they audited after the election. Picture the poll workers removing the canister from the unit and trying to unroll this paper and count potentially 1,000 ballots, even if you're only counting one race. At the conclusion of the count, according to the revised bill, the poll workers will post the hand count on the door of the precinct along with the DRE tapes. It says the hand count will prevail in the certified election results. I don't know about you, but I know that when I even balance my own checkbook, sometimes I do it more than once, and that's using a calculator. I think we're asking an incredible lot of people who are already making very, very small amounts of money. Ballots aren't really counted at polling places anymore. Yes, they're tabulated, but actual hand counts don't occur at the polling place except for paper ballots in some rural municipalities. We've moved away from that. That's truly the way it was done many, many decades ago when paper was manipulated, and it's been manipulated time and time again. I think that you're going to have counties who have to send in a second team of poll workers to assist in this counting process. I'll share with you briefly, because I respectfully disagree with the fact that you believe it might be 30 minutes longer. We don't know until we do it. But in Nevada, as I shared with you last time, even if the poll workers count at a speedy 2 minutes per ballot, and that's pretty fast to count at 2 minutes per ballot, the average time to count all the races on the ballot would be 33 hours. At a mere 200 votes per precinct at 2 minutes, we're talking 6 hours. So even if you're counting one race, by the time you unroll the paper and count that particular race and record it, how many times are they going to do that? If they miscount the first time, are they going to post those results? And what's posted is the certified results? Or are the poll workers going to be asked there to stay and count again? At what point do you decide what's the official record of the ballot? Senate Bill 500 calls for a complete audit of every race on the ballot within 30 days of the election, prior to anybody taking office. A complete audit of every race on the ballot will be counted, and it will be compared in the elections office. That count will be advertised. It will be public. Anyone can come observe that count. There will be teams of people counting in a controlled environment, something that I think would be far more advantageous than this revised bill. Thank you. If you have any questions, I'll be glad to answer them.
Any questions of the witness? What's your number?
Would you mind just pointing out in Senate Bill 500, the last thing that you talked about, where the complete audit of every vote?
Yes, sir. I'll be glad to. Toward the very end of the bill, it's in item D, and I'm currently looking at the amended version. It says, in addition to the count performed at the close of the polls, the Secretary of State shall cause a complete manual audit to be performed on each DRE unit used in the pilot project for voting within 30 days of the general election and within 30 days of the runoff. The audit will compare the results of the permanent records from each DRE unit with the electronic record, and the results of that audit will be made available to the public upon the completion of the audit.
It's page 3, lines about 18 on. Not in the it's in the substitute as well.
In the original bill,
It's in the original bill.
page 3, line 18.
It's in the substitute as well. See it?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
Any further questions of the witness?
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Ms. Rogers, if the Senate Bill 500 moves forward in the original version of what we were intending to have, is that, in your estimation, do these 3 counties have available to them the resources to execute this bill without additional state help?
In the original version of the bill?
The original version of the bill.
In the original version of the bill, we anticipate the pilot could cost $50,000 or less. We won't cost any more than that. And Senator Stevens has pledged to assist in getting the money to pay for the pilot, so that this will not cost the counties anything. We are not paying for poll workers, though. Under the revised bill, they would be required to have additional poll workers, and that's not part of the funding.
Can we make sure that we're talking about the same things? When we're talking about the original bill,
as passed out of the Senate, I should put it that way.
As passed out of the Senate.
Yes, ma'am.
When you're talking about the revised bill, you are referring to the one that's listed as the House Committee on Governmental Affairs substitute.
Correct.
So the original bill would cost $50,000.
Or less. That's a high estimate. I just didn't want to underestimate it. Currently, I anticipate it's going to cost between $30,000 and $50,000. And that's, majority of those funds are to lease the equipment.
Any other questions?
Follow up, please.
Please.
To lease the equipment. That, therefore, means that the machines as we now own them are not equipped to actually handle.
In their current form, no, ma'am, they are not.
So we just bring in some additional software, or we bring in an attachment?
We'll actually be leasing the next generation of equipment that has a voter verifiable paper audit trail. We'll be performing a state certification on it. The model that we intend to use for this pilot has already passed national qualification testing, which is required by Georgia law. we would perform a state certification on that particular unit and would use that for the pilot. The existing equipment would require some type of retrofitting in order to install a paper audit trail onto it. As for the software question, we'll be leasing along with the equipment the software. We'll have the source code escrowed at the Center for Election Systems for that particular version, just as we do for all versions of software. And we will also lease the software that's needed to be loaded onto each computer in those 3 counties.
Ms. Rogers, you're saying that you're not going to be testing any of the equipment that you have in place today?
No, sir. The equipment we currently use does not have a voter verifiable paper audit trail on it.
And you cannot retrofit it?
The vendor could possibly retrofit it if they were asked to go through research and development, but there would definitely have to be some funds available for that, and the General Assembly to date has not appropriated such.
Is Georgia the first state that has requested a paper trail?
No. In 2002, when we first bought the equipment, there wasn't any equipment on the market that had currently gone through national testing that had a voter verifiable paper audit trail. Some states are just now beginning to use the equipment that we're talking about leasing. States of Ohio, Utah are 2 that immediately come to mind. California is currently in the process of completing certification. They'll have equipment with a voter verifiable paper audit trail used in some of their counties, but Ohio and Utah are 2 that have gone statewide with that requirement.
Any further questions of the witness? Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Garland Fivaretto, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The first thing I want to do is I want to thank you, and I want to thank Senator Stevens. Senator Stevens, I don't think anybody in the legislature has done more than the senator to get this issue out and try to seek a consensus on it. And I don't think that anybody in the legislature has done more to try to seek a real solution to this problem than you, Mr. Chairman. And there are a lot of people here I think are grateful for that. I'm going to be careful not to repeat any testimony that I've already given you in regards to HB 790, except for a quick, maybe 30-second summary of where we stand that for the benefit of the committee members that were not here for that testimony, for had other commitments. Georgia is rated dead last nationally in voting systems implementation. No voter can verify whether or not their ballot was recorded correctly. No poll worker can verify whether or not any machine counted correctly. Recounts are not possible. Only reprints of previous unverifiable results, and errors and fraud are virtually undetectable statewide. Prior to 2002, 83% of Georgia voted on auditable optical scan or punch card ballots. That percentage is now 0%. At the request of Representative Buckner, she had asked for the reports and that I mentioned to you in the last meeting, and I've sent those to you. I trust you got those the day after the hearing, and I've also got hard copies that I'm leaving for the committee. The states of California, Nevada, and Maryland have all officially concluded that the same types of software and hardware that we run here are inadequate to conduct elections in their states. California sued Diebold, got a $2.5 million out-of-court settlement. Maryland just voted 137-0 to remove the machines from the 2006 election and replace them with optical scan devices, and we applaud that decision. In regards to SB 500, again, I want to thank Senator Stevens for getting us this far. I really appreciate that, Senator. And as the Senator stated, this is a self-repealing 3-precinct audit trail pilot. It does not rectify any of the previously described problems that Georgia has that I've just talked about, and we have concerns about that. It also really, we don't see that it serves any purpose because it doesn't require the voter-verified paper ballot audit trails to ever be implemented. In addition, as you point out, Mr. Chairman, it doesn't verify the feasibility of election night precinct hand counts for auditing that most of us here believe are critical to the accurate elections. The only way that we can verify that these machines are counting correctly on election night is to verify that they're counting correctly on election night. As I testified before you previously, certification can be bypassed easily. The machines can be made to count differently on different days of the week. They can be triggered to count differently without changing the source code, and illegal and uncertified patches can be applied after the software has been pilot tested or certified. Our analysis shows that all 7 million ballots that have been cast in Georgia in 2002 and 2004 were cast on illegal, uncertified software that was patched into our machines. And we will, there's not anything necessarily wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that necessarily because they could be legitimate patches. However, we do not know whether or not that's correct or not.
Mr. Ferberito, if you would, we have a question.
Yes.
I mean, you're obviously extremely passionate about this. You've just made an absolute statement. I'm not saying that I agree with it. I'm saying you made an absolute statement that every vote that was cast illegally in the state.
I said that our analysis did. And the election board has already confirmed that for 2004. I think you can check that.
And again, with your passion for this issue, why haven't you filed a lawsuit?
The reason that we have not filed a lawsuit is because, and we've talked about this quite often, but we believe that if we present the irrefutable, overwhelming evidence to the legislature, that the legislature will do the right thing. And that's why we're here. We don't want to do what Maryland did. It was successful in Maryland, but we believe in the people that we elected to office.
I take issue with some of your comments about.
I will withdraw that comment. I will withdraw that comment at the respect of the chairman.
Thank you. Any further questions?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I was not finished.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Anyway, so this is why we need voter verified.
Excuse me. Before you proceed, all of you are not going to be able to speak because we only have an hour in this room and we have 2 bills that we have to hear. So we have only got a little bit more time left. Please, proceed.
And I'd like to note that 1 or 2 of the people on the list have asked to yield their time to me to finish the testimony. The elections director testified, and just as she did once again, that we cannot count the ballots in the precinct on election night. Well, and she testified several different things at our last hearing. Let me just recap 3 of them that I think were very important. In the last hearing, she stated that we are required to implement voluntary federal guidelines. That is not correct. As most of you here know, the U.S. Constitution gives the states power to run elections, and voluntary means voluntary the last time that I looked in the dictionary. There is no Georgia law that requires us to implement a voluntary federal guideline. And I brought the election law, and I asked the elections director to please find the law in here and show it to the committee. The elections division may have rules and regulations, but I would like to remind the director that they are subordinate to Georgia law, not the other way around. The other testimony, as we've heard, that it was very dramatic, the 319-foot roll of paper that only had 64 ballots on it, and therefore we cannot count. This is going just to be a horrible disaster. So I thought I would just show you that we don't have to have 5-foot ballots. Okay, this is these are ballots in my hand that can be produced from a computer. This is a 17-race ballot. The only thing that has to be on the ballot is the names of the races and the candidates for which the voter voted, nothing else, plus a ballot identification and maybe a couple of more items. So I have in my hand here the 64 ballots that were supposed to go on the 319-foot roll of paper. You can fit this in the palm of your hand. Now, the truth is that you probably want to make this a little bit bigger. It might be a 5-inch ballot to get all the information on it the way you would like. However, it's certainly not going to be 5 feet. The last thing we've heard, and the most amazing thing to me that I've heard, is that it's going to take anywhere between 33 to 66 hours to count a single race in the precinct. And I do not understand that. The chairman has testified that it takes 3 30 minutes, and I think that we would certainly agree with that. Now, while the elections director was testifying adamantly against voter-verified paper ballot audit trails and vote count verification, we were receiving information from the office that said that they support it. So I don't know how. I'm not getting this. You know, we're hearing that they support it, but they were showing us that they don't when we testify. So there is a condition, something strange. But anyway, what I would like to do is, with the permission, I think that there's a discrepancy, and I understand that there's a difference in testimony here that neither one of us cannot possibly be telling the truth. And let me, let's
don't start accusing people of anything other than the truth, please.
All right. I would like to get on the record. I'd just like to bring the committee up to date on the brief history of how did we get to this point. And because it's important for your vote.
You've got 2 minutes because we are running out of time. Please.
All right, then I will bypass that. A lot of people ask us what state's done it right, and I'd like to present the historic precedent of Maryland. They have the same vendor, the same machine series, software problems, and they've had a lot of credibility issues there as well. I'll raise to you, I think the chairman has a copy of the Governor Elrick's February 15th, 6th letter to the Board of Elections, where he says he no longer has confidence in the State Board of Elections' ability to conduct fair and accurate elections in 2006. And he also goes on to say that their own elections administration is not working on the interests of the citizens. Now, that sounds like a partisan statement to me. However, the legislature voted 137-0, I want to point out to the committee, to prohibit the board from using the same AccuVote TS series machines that we have in their 2006 elections, and they authorized immediate release of $16 million for the optical scan equipment. The key difference, as the chairman has pointed out, is that they did that as a result of a lawsuit here, and we have trusted we do not want to do that here. So let's just look at to recap and close out. What is the difference? What are the things that we are doing right today? What is preventing us from doing the right thing? It's not the technology. I mean, if the technology is that we're going to have a rolling paper ballot and we're buying all new computer equipment in order to conduct the test, that seems like we've got the wrong equipment. We volunteered to produce the ballot printing software for the state and donate it. If it's the money, Maryland voted unanimously to use their emergency funds to protect their citizens' rights. If it is I also like to point out that the election board just voted 2 weeks ago, for a $60 million expenditure for poll books, which we believe should have been spent on audit trails, because that's the key issue. There's no law preventing us from doing this. There's certainly no consensus issue, because the Senator Stevens bill passed 51-0, and in Maryland it was 137-0. And it's certainly not time. This is an issue that's for all of us, that's concerned of all of us, because this whole electronic version, voting conversion, was made in 8 months. And now we're saying that we need years to do a pilot program and test it out and just put printers on these machines. It doesn't make any sense to the people here. So, in conclusion, Mr. Chairman, we believe, a lot of us here, that if SB 500 was passed as is, it's going to bring a lot of ridicule to the legislature and the sponsors for 3 reasons. It doesn't have statewide implementation of voter-verified paper ballot audit trails that we need. It doesn't have, at least the original version that we just saw without the committee substitute, had no election night precinct audit to verify that the machines are counting correctly. That's the key thing. That's the only way to verify. Certification and pilot tests don't work. And it also doesn't address the problems that I previously described. So what we're asking for
is action similar to that in Maryland. They immediately replaced all of their equipment for the 2006 election, and that's their vote, and it's going to go to the Senate, I think, very, very soon. We have had two bills, bipartisan bill SB 591 in the Senate, which our input was graciously accepted, as well as HB 790 here, which our input was also graciously accepted by the committee, and we thank you for that. We appreciate it. So,
Mr. Favorito, if I may, you suggested that we replace all of that equipment. How much would that cost?
Well,
what would you replace it with?
Well, if I understand the election director's testimony correctly, and the pilot, and at least that's on the election board testimony, they're going to replace the entire equipment with the new technology of Diebold, which apparently still has a roll of paper and can't print a balance if I put all this together. So, and the estimates that we've gotten to do that from Kennesaw would run another $100 million. That seems kind of strange to me. So, obviously, optical scan would be much more cost effective. But in either case, the most important thing is to have that count at the precinct to verify that these machines are counting correctly on election night. It's the only way we can do that. So we would ask that you consider substituting HB 790. That's the most practical thing to do because it does have voter.
Thank you.
Voter verified.
I appreciate that, but what we're doing is we're here to hear.
Right, understand.
Senate Bill 500.
But the content is what I'm referring to. Is the content could be baked in. And let me I'll just close by asking the audience here. How many people want SB 500 in the current state? And we have one. How many people want? How many people need to believe that this needs to be enhanced with the things that I've talked about? So, Mr. Chairman, there's a lot of people that feel, and because we have been disenfranchised in 2002, that democracy is no longer working in Georgia. So we ask that we do the will of the people here and try to tell these people that their vote counts just as much as someone who lives in Maryland.
Mr. Favorito, before you get away, the chairman has a question of you.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman.
I would ask this, since we had a show of hands, how many of you believe that Senate Bill 500, as it is a step in the right direction? So 2 of you. And the others would rather us do nothing than pass Senate Bill 500. Is that it?
It's a false choice.
No, it's not. It's a fair statement. I mean,
HB 790
that's thank you for the.
And the other choice is the amended version as well.
Thank you, Mr. Favorito.
I'll leave these reports. I'm leaving the reports with the chairman. And also includes all the mail-in reports.
Who is that? Representative Powell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I may want to address this to the gentleman since he was polling the audience. As I've looked at the substitute for SB 500, that has got certain parts of 790 integrated into it. And while I certainly think 790 would be a way to go, I understand in the subcommittee that was tabled in the subcommittee, and realistically, I've been here long enough that I have seen a lot of things that I want never passes. A lot of things get tabled, but I'd like to ask y'all from the substitute to 500 that integrates certain parts of 790 into it. Is that what y'all would like to see? Or at least, that seems to me to be at least a move forward.
Yes, well, I think that we would agree that is a move forward. The issue that we have is with the pilot. If you compare that to Maryland, they are throwing all of their machines out for the 2006 election because this is such a serious issue, and they're replacing it with optical lease band. I agree with Representative Powell. That would be a step forward if we included the precinct hand count in Senator Stevens' bill, and that would be a step forward because it would prove whether or not it takes 33 hours or 30 minutes or 66 hours to count a single race in the precinct. So, yes, I would agree, but the issues we still have is that compared to Maryland, the pilot is somewhat of a slap in the face to the people in Georgia.
But it is a start in the right direction, isn't it?
I think we would agree with that.
Thank you. I believe we're at the point, especially since we're running out of time, for a motion, if you will, on Senate Bill 500.
At proper time, I would like to offer an amendment to Senate Bill 500. In fact, I have two amendments.
Please.
On page, the original bill.
I believe we need a motion to pass.
Yeah, there's no motion yet.
Move do pass.
Second. From 500.
Substitute?
No, from the original. Are you not working
From the original, LS 2829553S.
Please, please proceed.
I would offer to Senate Bill 500 the following two amendments. On page 3, line 27, we'll stay at line 27.
27 says section 3.
Okay, well, that would bump it down when we add a new section F. Following line 26, which is section E, we would add a new section F that would read, "The state of Georgia shall provide the funds needed to implement this pilot project. Implementation of the pilot project shall be dependent upon funding."
Would you repeat that, please?
This, new section F, "The state of Georgia shall provide the funding needed to implement said pilot project. Implementation of the pilot project shall be dependent upon funding."
Is there a second on that amendment?
Representative, if I may,
Yes.
I believe that amendment would fit better at line 26 and make it subsection E and then make the current E F.
That's fine.
So we're
I agree.
you're gonna, just a suggestion.
Is that a suggestion?
I accept the
suggestion?
I accept the suggestion.
Thank you. Is there a second on that?
Second.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't. All those in favor of the amendment as presented signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, like sign. So amended. Did you say you had another amendment?
Yes. And following that with a new section that would read, 45 days after the election, the Secretary of State shall conduct a public hearing in the pilot project areas. A summary of these comments shall be submitted to the Georgia General Assembly.
Is there a second to that motion?
Can you repeat that?
45 days after the election,
This is a new section 3.
this new section. The Secretary of State shall conduct a public hearing in the pilot areas. The summary of these comments shall be submitted to the Georgia General Assembly. Actually, that should say within 45 days. Otherwise, we don't want to look like we're mandating that on exactly 45 days these public hearings would be held, but within 45 days.
Can you read that one more time, please?
Within 45 days after the election, the Secretary of State shall conduct a public hearing in the pilot areas. A summary of these comments shall be submitted to the Georgia General Assembly.
Would you be willing to change it, language to say report of the findings as well as comments?
I would accept that.
I think that would give us a broader.
A summary of the findings.
And Section 3 will become Section 4?
Yes.
Representative, I think it would also be good if we added to that, that report would be available to the public as well.
Well,
I think it would be once it was provided to us, but I think abundance of caution.
that's fine. Any document we have is available to the public anyway. So. That's it.
Is there a second on the amendment? All those in favor of the amendment signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Thank you. If there is no more perfection of the bill itself, I would like to...
I'd like to get a clarification, Mr. Chairman, if you good.
Please. Representative Powell.
If I understand, we're working back off the original 500 as amended. And if we wanted to work from the substitute that had a little bit more substance as far as moving toward more verifiable audit trail, what would be the procedure that we need to move to?
I believe we would have to vote
down.
Vote down 500 and vote the amendment out.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Is there a motion on House Bill 500? I'm sorry, Senate Bill 500.
Mr. Chairman, I move to pass Senate Bill 500.
Second, as amended?
As amended.
You move do pass on LC 28, 29, 53S.
Mr. Chairman, it would be the committee substitute. General Affairs Committee substitute.
Will we move to that without, I thought we had to move on the first.
Well, the amendments have been moved and adopted. And so the proper motion, I believe, is do pass
As amended by committee.
by committee substitute.
Well, I so move, Mr.
SB
Chairman.
500.
But the LC number is still the same.
It will change.
And
5953S.
yes,
2953S.
correct. Do I hear a motion? We had a motion. We had a second.
So moved as amended by the committee.
Thank you. All those in favor of the...
Chairman, if I may,
Yes.
I just want to check. And we may need legal counsel to clarify this. If SB 500 as committee sub fails, then it requires another committee meeting to pass.
Then the motion would be in order for the substitute that we've been looking at also.
That's correct.
Okay. But and if that motion fails, then SB 500 we'll have to put it on a different committee meeting.
If SB 500 substitute fails, you're saying. Is that correct?
We actually now have two governmental affairs substitutes that we're working from. We've got the one that started with LC 28, 29, 53S that was successfully amended twice, and that's the one that the motion is on. Do pass. If it fails, then a motion do pass on LC 28, 3082S
Be in order.
is in order. then if that motion fails, we're adjourned without passage of a bill.
Does everybody understand that?
I just want to make sure everybody understands the posture that we're in. That is correct, isn't
We
Well-
defeat both bills, we have no bill.
Correct.
Well, I would encourage the members to take a good look at the other substitute. I think that is more far-ranging to get us at least ways a few more steps down the road toward verifiable elections and legitimacy.
Please. Thank you.
Point of clarification. The committee isn't through until we vote to adjourn.
That's correct.
And should either bill or both bills be voted down, we can continue to come back and look at these bills as long as the committee is willing to work on the bills.
That's correct. We have a motion and a second.
Actually, you don't have a second.
I'm sorry.
On the amended bill. You have a motion, and I will make a second.
I thought you did make a second. I'm sorry.
That was on the
Okay. All right.
originally
All right.
to
Thank
get
you.
us to the amendments.
Thank you. All those in favor of Senate Bill 500 as amended, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
No.
No. Now,
Like to be recognized.
before we recognize, I think you would like to amend the substitute, wouldn't you? Would you make a motion to, accordingly, please?
Well, I make a motion, we have a motion to accept the committee substitute from Representative Powell, is that correct?
That's correct.
I'd like to move that we accept LC 283082S.
And you have a second. Now you're ready for
moved, yes.
amendment.
Right.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, I would move that on, prior to Section 3,
Page 5.
okay, page 5, after line 28, after line 27, we would have a new section F that would read,
No. Excuse me, Matt. We would have a new section.
if we're bumping
You're
down-
right. You're right. It is new section F.
Okay, a new section F, and everything else would fall into place after that.
And F would become G.
Correct.
Okay.
The state of Georgia shall provide the funding needed to implement said pilot project. Implementation of the pilot project shall be dependent upon funding. I'm going to offer the same, also you want to vote on them separately or together?
No, we can put them together if you'll offer the same one.
Okay, and then following that, same amendment, within 45 days after the election.
A new section 3.
Secretary of State shall conduct a public hearing in the pilot areas. A summary of the findings and comments shall be submitted to the Georgia General Assembly and made available to the public.
Which is a new section 3, and section 3 will become section 4. Correct?
Correct.
And section 4 becomes section 5, correct?
Okay, everything else just moves down when that's inserted.
Is there a second?
I'd like point of inquiry.
State your point.
And I understand both your amendments. I have concern about the first amendment, about the state shall appropriate the money. While I agree with it, the state should, but I have concerns that if the state does not, or if something happens in the budget process, that would be a death knell to the provisions of this bill.
Well, that should prevail upon those who are interested in seeing this to make sure that that money is in the budget.
I understand, but as we all know, the appropriations process works independently and separately of general legislation. And the question I've got is, could that not possibly be the death knell to this?
Well, a death knell could also be the fact if the local elections board or the local county commission don't have the money to implement it.
Chairman, if I, and Senator Stevens may be able to answer this, and I apologize.
Senator Stevens, if you would, please.
Or the people who are in the bill, is that at their request?
The original counties?
Right.
There were discussions that took place with the Secretary of State's office about which counties had an interest in the legislation and an experimental program, and which had the capabilities to handle such an experiment, and these counties qualified on both counts.
Mr. Chairman, can we hear from Mr. Grubier?
Mr. Grubier, would you please step forward, please?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just very briefly, I'm with Jim Grubiak, representing the County Commissioners Association of Georgia, but I was specifically asked to come before this body by Cobb County. Cobb County is one of the volunteers, I guess you'd say, in this pilot project. They do support 500. There's no doubt about it. They are willing to do it, what they need to do to participate in the pilot project. However, they are concerned about the substitute language that would require the hand count. Their concern goes to the poll workers who will already be working 12 and 14 hours at that point in time, going to be asked to stay however long, whether it takes 30 minutes or 3 hours. So they're concerned about the stress and the fatigue that the poll workers will be experiencing at that point in time, and it also may lead to errors in their counting if they've already been there for 12 hours or 10 hours or 13 hours, whatever it may be. Now they're counting, and so they're concerned about what effect that would have. Their elections board suggests that they may not want to be a participant in it if the substitute language is included in the bill. The hand count language is in the bill. So I'm just relaying that on behalf of Cobb County, and appreciate your time and letting me to do that for them. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Any other comments from the members?
This to me just suggests that we ought to keep the amendment in there to make sure that there would be funds, and the county would not be expected to pay for the extra efforts themselves. They'd be able to hire extra poll workers for the count if that's what's necessary, and the state would be paying for it. So that would, this latest comment, I think, speaks in favor of the amendment.
Thank you, Representative Jenkins. If there is no further debate or questions from the members, do I hear? We don't have a motion on the floor yet, do we? Do I hear a motion?
Move to pass as amended.
A second?
Second.
We have a do pass as amended on LC 28.
Mr. Chairman, we have not voted on the amendments.
I thought we had. Did we get lost? Excuse me, I'm sorry. We'll back up. On the amendments that were added to the original bill that had been added to the committee substitute, do I hear a do pass?
I move to pass.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor of the amendments
Aye.
to the substitute bill? Mm-hmm. Say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, like sign? Thank you. Now, do I have a motion on Senate Bill 500 LC as amended by committee? I have a move and a second. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
We have 2 noes. All right. Thank you. We have another bill that the chairman will hear. Another Senate bill. Is he? Senator Stevens, I understand you're going to present this bill?
Yes, sir, I can multitask.
Please, I'm sure
Senator
you can.
Moody has been called away to present one of the governor's bills, so I'm familiar with Senate Resolution 804, and I'll present that when the chairman is ready.
Yes. Thank you. Please proceed. Thank you, Senator.
Senate Resolution 804 simply creates a boundary commission for North Fulton County. It will be composed of 1 representative selected by each of the existing cities, and potentially, if actions are taken during the 06 General Assembly, 1 representative from each of the new proposed cities. The commission will study the boundaries of the cities in North Fulton, and if it's appropriate, will suggest boundary changes to the General Assembly by February 1st of next year for y'all's consideration. Any recommendations from the committee have to be done unanimously, and the committee will not convene until all members are appointed. So as a favor to the senator from the 56, I'm presenting that relatively simple resolution and present it to you for your consideration.
Are there any questions of the senator? Yes, sir. Senator, Representative Jenkins.
First question is, are we talking about LC 283045S or LC 283072S?
The one that Senator Moody gave me to present is LC 283072S.
Thank you.
Senator Stevens, if I understand correctly, the difference is that the latest version would require unanimous agreement among the municipalities.
Yes, sir, that is correct. As I understand it, it also clarifies to make sure that the committee can't convene until all members have been selected and appointed.
Mr. Chairman, at the proper time, I'd like to make a motion.
It is the proper time.
I move do pass committee substitute to SR 804, LC 283072S.
Second.
We have a do pass and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Thank you. We stand adjourned.